Hi there, guys. It's Kaya Kaynak of football.london here for you, and I'm bringing you something a little bit new, something brand new for your Thursday morning to try something just a little bit fresh. It's an idea I've had for a while to get into this whole YouTube thing and see if I can start delivering you guys Arsenal content in a different manner. And yeah, today is going to be the first, and one of you out there is my first ever YouTube viewer, so thank you very much for tuning in, whoever you are. Thank you regardless of who you are or when you're tuning in for watching this video, this first of what I'm hoping is going to be relatively frequent series of videos that I'm going to be trying to bring to you on this YouTube channel. If you like them, please do like and please do subscribe. I've heard people say that on their videos so many times. I'm going to be learning as I'm going doing this thing, so I'm hoping you guys will be patient with me. I'm hoping you'll all help me out with comments and interactions, because I love doing that with you guys on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram as well a little bit. I'm starting up a new Instagram page as well, which is at Kaya Kaynak FL. Really trying to do the whole social media thing properly this summer, and yeah, just a bit about what I'm trying to achieve with this. So my plan is to bring you even closer to Arsenal, just to give you that insight as someone who is fortunate enough to have a press pass, someone who's fortunate enough to be in the press conferences. I'm travelling away with Arsenal. I'm there at almost every game. I'm close to the club, and I want to bring you guys closer with me. So my plan is to get you guys as close to the club via this video content, on top of all the work I'm doing with Football London and all my Facebook stuff, Twitter stuff, Instagram stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I guess it feels like quite a good time to start, because it is a very busy time for Arsenal right now. There is so much going on. I don't really know where to start. It's a decision between Kai Havertz and Declan Rice. I guess I'll go for Declan Rice to start with, because that is the big transfer story, and that's the one that everyone seems to be talking about. Of course, the news came out on Tuesday evening, as it was, that Arsenal had submitted that £100 million upfront offer for Declan Rice, and then with the 5 millions in add-ons. That is just, it's outrageous. It's the kind of money we've not really associated with Arsenal in the past. We all think of Arsenal, I think, at least as someone who's been sort of a fan of the club before and someone who's been close to the club, we all remember those days where Arsenal could barely afford to keep their best talent, could barely afford to keep any important players that they wanted to keep at the club. We've all got those scars from Robin van Persie, Samir Nasri, Cesc Fabregas. Alex Song was a player I bought. I bought an Alex Song shirt, and within weeks he'd gone. So that's the kind of stuff we've all kind of had to deal with. I know so many Arsenal fans who have had similar stories when it comes to transfers, and now the tables are turned, and Arsenal are the ones going out and signing the best players. Obviously, it's not done yet, and I don't want to make it seem like it is, because there's still negotiations ongoing, and my understanding is those talks are ongoing. They're just ironing out the final details of the fee and the structure of the payments. Obviously, West Ham have kind of played a blinder here as far as I'm concerned, because Arsenal went in hoping that they could maybe get a slightly diminished fee for Rice. Obviously, all the talk earlier in the window was that Arsenal were hoping to, or willing to go up to around £100 million, and that's what West Ham, wanted to achieve. And Arsenal obviously went in with the initial bids a little bit lower than that, and they were trying to work their way up and maybe work out some structural payments. But now we finally reached the £100 million, and that feels like it was what West Ham were after. In fairness to West Ham, you know, the stuff that's come out about Manchester City being interested, all those kind of talks, yeah, I think they've mastered it in terms of the media and the way you sort of handle these kind of things. And it's been interesting being involved sort of in the process and sort of seeing how these things work, and they've handled it very well. They've briefed very well to try and get a maximum fee out of Arsenal, which, you know, fair play to them. This is probably their best ever Premier League player. I mean, maybe Dimitri Payet would disagree. I can't think of too many other West Ham players. Frank Lampard wasn't there for long enough. Carrick wasn't there for long enough. Di Canio was there, but only briefly. I think Declan Rice is probably, especially given that he's won a trophy, probably West Ham's greatest ever Premier League player, and now suddenly they're going to let him go. And obviously they signalled at the start of the window, David Sullivan signalled, I think it was the day after the Europa Conference League final, which of course Declan Rice lifted, and yeah, he signalled he's leaving. He basically said those exact words. He said it has to be his last game, and from that point on we've all known he's going. But for West Ham, it's been about getting the most money they can for their most valuable asset, and I totally understand it. And I've seen a lot of criticism of Arsenal's attempts here, Arsenal's sort of way of going about this transfer, and I think maybe that also is a little bit unfair. I think Arsenal have gone about it in the right way. They've been doing the groundwork for a very long time. I know that Arteta has been very interested in Declan Rice. Rice has been interested since at least January in coming to Arsenal. Those talks started all the way back then. Very in-depth personal talks were happening all the way back in January, and that is the kind of stuff that you need to put in the groundwork, because it did seem like a long time Declan Rice was destined to go to Chelsea. Remember, he is, I don't want to sort of do him down in any of your opinions, but he is a Chelsea fan. He was sort of came through the Chelsea academy, was released there, went to West Ham, joined them the next day, which I think says a lot about his mentality as a player. He was sort of a free agent for one day before I think his dad took him to next trials, or maybe it was even later that evening. So it's an incredible story if ever you get the chance to read about it. And it seemed like he was going to be going back to Chelsea for so long, and obviously Chelsea have had their problems in recent times, and they're not going to be a Champions League team next year, and Arsenal are, and it's all coincided with when Rice is ready to move on. But I think Arsenal have done really well to move ahead, and then other teams are interested. So Bayern Munich, can you imagine a few years ago Arsenal competing with Bayern Munich for a transfer and winning? Same with Manchester City, although part of me does wonder how serious Man City's interest was. I know they bid £90 million for a player, and you don't bid £90 million for a player if you're not properly interested. But I do wonder if maybe there was a case of West Ham trying to drive up the price and sort of signifying to City that, look, we'd be open to selling, and hoping that Arsenal would eventually bid more, because it had become so public in the way that Arsenal were going about it. Obviously, they would have preferred to keep it quiet. Arsenal want to keep their transfer business quiet, but there's some very good reporters around the club who do a very good job of trying to make that as difficult as possible, I'm afraid. But when it comes to Declan Rice, I think Arsenal have actually gone about it fine. The whole idea of why don't they just pay the money, I don't think it's quite as simple as that, because from an Arsenal perspective, and I think this in the transfer window in general, reputation is massive. So if you go in looking to buy a player and you say, oh, well, we'll eventually pay. And I look at Man United as an example of this. Last summer, they tried to lowball Ajax for Anthony. It was very clear they wanted Anthony. They ended up paying, I think, near 90 million for him, which I think we can all agree is probably an overpay. And I think people within the game think that too. I've spoken to people at Arsenal who actually think Man United overpaid for Anthony. And now, this summer, when they're trying to do business with, for example, let's say Mason Mount, who was previously is someone Arsenal have looked at in the past, they now can't go in and legitimately say, well, we want to pay less, because Chelsea, as a selling club in that situation, will go, oh, hang on, you eventually buckled and paid what you need to pay for Anthony, so why would we not wait and see what you're willing to pay? Why would we be the ones who give you a good deal? And Arsenal had that issue in the past. They had that issue with some contract extensions as well, where I think they sort of showed themselves as a club who were willing to pay over the odds maybe, and now they're changing that reputation. They've shown with deals like Alessandro Martinez last summer, Mykhailo Mudryk in January, Caicedo sort of, although not really, in January as well, Dusan Vlahovic the year before. They've shown they're willing to walk away from deals, and I think that in a negotiation is kind of one of your strongest cards to play. I think that's a really important thing to be able to have in your back pocket and say, look, we've got a valuation for the player, but if you're not going to be willing to pay ball and maybe meet us a little bit in the middle, then we will walk away. It doesn't matter how important the player is, and Declan Rice is a massively important player. Mikel Arteta views him as a potential, future captain if Martin Odegaard is, maybe moves on or is unavailable or whatever, although there's no suggestion that's going to happen, and Odegaard hopefully will be signing a new contract relatively soon. I think those talks are scheduled to begin soon. But yeah, it's great news for Arsenal. The thread I was going on there was just, I think Arsenal have re-established themselves as big players in the transfer market, and that's credit to Edu, that's credit to Richard Garlick and the whole team behind it. James Ellis is the director of football, the chief scout, I believe. So chief scout, sorry, not director of football, but it's massive. It's a massive coup for Arsenal if they're able to officially get this over the line, and we need to, of course, state that it's not officially over the line as things stand, although it looks to be heading in a very positive direction. My sort of colleague, my Reach colleague at the MEN, Simon Bajkowski, reported yesterday that Manchester City are pulling out of the race. So it does seem as though Arsenal have a clear run, because Bayern Munich aren't going to match them. Manchester United have been sort of lurking in the background, like they are not really in a position where they can commit that level of money on a player with their takeover issues. Obviously, they want to spend elsewhere, maybe a goalkeeper, obviously Mason Mount, who I mentioned before. So, yeah, it's looking really good for Arsenal. And the wages, the personal terms, those are all pretty much sorted as far as I'm aware. So it's just a case of sort of ironing out those final details between the clubs, when everything's going to be paid, what period, because West Ham want as much money up front as possible, because they then want to go out and spend this money in the summer. They want to bring in players who can replace Declan Rice and who can prepare them for a European venture. They're going to the Europa League, of course, next season. Didn't mean to hit the microphone there. Very excited. It is, of course, my first video, so go easy with me on that one. But yes, let's move on a little bit from Declan Rice and talk about the other big transfer story that's going on with Arsenal right now, and that is, of course, Kai Havertz, who was confirmed. So we can talk about this being done. That is a confirmed transfer for Arsenal, and in my opinion, another really good signing. I know. So when I put this out, I've actually been on holiday for the past couple of weeks, but I've been keeping my ear a little bit close to the ground and sort of seeing what the vibe is and the reaction from Arsenal fans, and it hasn't always been the most positive. When I've posted updates about Havertz, I've had a few negative interactions where people saying, why are Arsenal paying that money? Why are Arsenal signing Havertz even? And so the money, I think, critics have a fair point on. 65 million in total, so that's including add-ons, etc. Could rise to 65 million. That's a fair criticism to have. It does seem like a lot of money. But let's think about this from an Arsenal perspective and how they would value these players. So he's coming in on a long-term deal. So Arsenal will sort of amortise that over a long period of time. Also, from their perspective, he's 24 years old. So if things don't quite go right, there is a good chance of resale value there for Arsenal. They can definitely sell him on. And if things do go right, other teams were interested in Havertz this summer. Let's not forget, Real Madrid were interested, Bayern Munich were interested. And I don't expect that to necessarily go away, particularly when you consider that Havertz is going to be coming into an Arsenal side where he's going to have the stability of coaching. He's going to have a good family unit around him, which he mentioned in his interview, and all those kind of things, which I think will be a positive for him and head in the right direction as far as he's concerned. So all that good stuff's going to be going on, and yeah, I think it's steep. It's probably a bit too much, but I think Arsenal will feel that they were willing to pay for it. And Mikel Arteta said in that interview he did with Marca earlier this week, didn't he? Talent comes at a price, and Kai Havertz is a very talented player, and the other question around him is where is he going to play? Now, I've heard from people inside Arsenal and inside the club that the plan is to play him in midfield. The plan is to use him, I guess, alongside Martin Odegaard. And Mikel Arteta is very confident that he can transform Havertz into playing that position. Obviously, he's primarily played at Chelsea either as a false 9 or just as a number 10. And speaking to people at Chelsea, a couple of people around the club who tell me that the best game he's had was sort of in a number 10 role, just behind the striker. But I look at it from an Arsenal perspective, and I think that left 8 position, how was Granit Xhaka playing it last season? And a lot of those runs Xhaka was making were to get beyond the defence, onto those crosses, be it from Bukayo Saka, Ben White or Martin Odegaard when he drifted out to the right. Now, you put those balls into the box and you've got a 6'2" Kai Havertz running onto them, and he scores a lot of headers for Chelsea. He's a very good finisher. Well, he's not the greatest finisher, but he's probably a better finisher than Granit Xhaka in the box. You elevate that position. It goes from a position where Xhaka, we were all very happy with him getting 9 goals last season, but if Havertz comes in and gets 15, I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure, because he's not always been able to be the most sort of efficient in front of goal at Chelsea, but if he comes in and gets maybe 12 or 13, 14 goals, that position is suddenly more effective for Arsenal. And on top of that, it's something else for opposition defences to have to worry about. They can't go and throw all their eggs into one basket in terms of trying to stop Odegaard, Saka, Jesus, Martinelli. They've now got another attacking issue to worry about, and obviously Zinchenko behind them, plenty of other attacking threats, and it just makes Arsenal a more dangerous team, in my opinion. And you want Champions League quality. Kai Havertz is Champions League quality. He's won the Champions League. He's literally won the Champions League for Chelsea. He scored a Champions League winning goal. I think he just brings a lot to this Arsenal side. I think we looked before in games where Xhaka was out, and maybe last season Fabio Vieira came in and didn't quite hit the heights. I'd be more confident of Kai Havertz hitting those heights. And Mikel Arteta is pretty confident that he can sort of develop Havertz into that position. And I think the reason he feels so confident, again, speaking to people around the club, they tell me it's because sort of he's done something similar with Odegaard, who had not quite played the 4-3-3 in the same position. He'd done it a bit at Sociedad, but generally he'd been more of a 10. And now Havertz coming in, I think, can play that 8 role. But again, it's versatility that he's coming in for. Arteta loves versatility. You look at the signings Arsenal are making. Rice can play anywhere in midfield. Havertz can play more or less anywhere in midfield, on the wings, up front. Jurrien Timber, who's another player they're linked to, and I'll come on to him in a little bit, can play more or less anywhere along the back line and can play in midfield too. So it makes sense from an Arsenal perspective. I think he's a very Mikel Arteta signing. It's a Premier League player, proven quality, good age, another commitment to Arsenal signing young players, and it's yet more example of just how smoothly things are running at the Arsenal transfer sort of team, HQ, if you like. I think it makes sense. I think it's a good signing. I know people might disagree, but let me know what you think in the comments section about that. I think it's a really good deal for Arsenal, and I hinted that I'd come on to him, so I might as well move on to him now. And the third player that Arsenal are currently looking to bring in, and I'm not saying they're stopping at 3 by any chance. I nearly knocked my water off the side of the desk there. That's how excited I was to talk about that. Well, I'm not suggesting at any stage that Arsenal are going to stop at 3, by the way. I think they will go on and sign more. But as it stands, the third player they are currently intensely pursuing is Jurrien Timber from Ajax, and Fabrizio Romano, I believe, reported that a second bid has gone in for him. Like I said, I've been on holiday for the past couple of weeks. I haven't quite had my ear to the ground as much on this one. I'm back next week, so I'll be able to try and bring you guys a little bit more. But he's a player that Arsenal were pursuing. I know they put in their first bid for him. That first bid was around 30 million euros. I know that Ajax want around 50 million, and it seems like that one's heading in the right direction too. It seems like Timber only wants to come to Arsenal. Again, you're noticing a lot of the trend with these players who their decision is to come to Arsenal. They see the project, they see the way things are going, they see Arteta, they see, as Havertz said in his interview, the family vibe, the good vibes around the place, and they think, wow, this is a place I want to go. And you compare that to a couple seasons ago where Arsenal had back-to-back 7th and 8th place finishes, and how difficult it was to convince players to come there. And you look at sort of maybe the pool Arsenal were shopping in, and Aaron Ramsdale, Ben White, etc. have gone on to become fantastic players for Arsenal. Let's not get anything wrong about that. But the teams they came from were Sheffield United, Brighton when they weren't quite the force they are now. And now Arsenal can look to the best players across Europe, and they can think, well, we can get him. And they can convince them to come. And Timber is another one of those. I think it makes a lot of sense for Arsenal. It strengthens two positions where towards the end of last season they were struggling, and right back and centre back, and more competition for Ben White, more competition for William Saliba. I think Arsenal's issue towards the end of last season maybe was when Saliba got injured, they didn't quite have the defensive cover to continue playing the way they wanted to play. Jakub Kiwior came in, but he was a left footer on the right. Rob Holding came in and couldn't quite distribute in the same way Saliba could, and that's no slight on Rob Holding. I think William Saliba is possibly one of, if not the best ball-playing defenders in the world, so it's a very high standard to match, and I think Holding did okay, even if he struggled a bit in a few games, and Kiwior did well as well, but again, you sort of miss a few things, and Ben White coming in those last couple of games, he can do that role. Timber can do that role too. He's, I've seen people criticising his height. I remember those conversations when Ben White came in. I remember the whole analysis on Sky. Ben White's too short. He can't win any headers. He can't be a centre-back for a big team. He went on to become a fantastic centre-back for Arsenal that season, and has gone on to become a fantastic right-back for Arsenal last season. And potentially, there's just those options there that Arsenal have, and obviously Takahiro Tomiyasu can play all those positions, can now play left back as well potentially, and I do wonder what it means for Kieran Tierney's future. It does seem now that Arsenal have cover in almost every position along the back line, and I know that Tierney is a player who's had interest from Newcastle, he's had interest from lots of teams, even Real Madrid in the past were interested, so all those kind of things going on, and you start to wonder, what does it mean for Kieran Tierney, who I think is a fantastic player. I think he could offer Arsenal a lot, and I think if they kept him in the squad, great, because you talk about the versatility that Havertz brings you, you talk about the different options that Havertz brings you. It's a very similar thing with Tierney in the sense that sometimes there are games where you don't need the inverted left back, you need the left back who can overlap and whip in a few crosses. I think back to West Ham last season, the away game where West Ham were defending deep and narrow and Arsenal needed some width, and they took Tierney off, and I thought that was a bad decision personally. And I look back on those kind of games and I wonder, maybe could Kieran Tierney be kept on? I think there are people at Arsenal who would like to keep him, but at the same time, I don't know if he'd want to stay and be back up. He's a player who generally has been first choice throughout his entire career. He came into the Celtic side very young and has played a lot, but he misses a few games through injury, and I wonder if Arsenal will look to cash in this summer. There's plenty of interest in him. He's, like I say, a very good player, and Arsenal can quite rightly demand a pretty high fee for him because they've got him under contract. Fair play to the contracts team again. Richard Garlick and Eddie, they've nailed that. They've nailed that situation. He's got 3 more years on his deal, and a long way to go on that front. But when it comes to Timber, that one looks to be heading in a positive direction too. Again, not done, not completely finalised because it's a transfer window and crazy things can happen. And listen, in January we were saying Madrid was heading in the right direction, and then all that happened and Chelsea came in with a crazy offer. So I wouldn't want to say anything's concrete, but that looks to be heading in the right direction. That looks to be heading in the positive direction, and positivity feels like a good place to wrap up. I've been going for about 20 minutes now. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. I'm hoping to do a lot more of these. Let me know if you've got any ideas, anything you want me to talk about, anything you want to hear from me. My plan is to build this up a little bit more before we start going out to the preseason stuff. So Nuremberg, America, where I'm hoping to see loads of you guys out there and hopefully hang out with as many of you as possible. And yeah, keep creating videos because that's the plan. That's the plan, is to bring you guys as close as possible. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Please like and subscribe if you do. I'm trying to build the channel, so I'm starting from the very bottom. So all the help I can get from you guys would be absolutely amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching my first ever video. I hope it was okay. Please, yeah, any feedback you guys can give me, would really appreciate it. But I'll be planning to come back to you with another one very, very soon. Until then though, thank you very much and have a absolutely wonderful day. Cheers guys, and bye bye.